Welcome back to Next Shift with Rick Wagen. Suzuki does not suck. I have my guest Stephen Cohen back for a discussion about the Montreal Canadiens, who are 8-2 in their last 10 games. Prior to the last couple of days, they actually found themselves in the wild card spot for a moment. Some teams have passed them since then, but the Canadiens are right in the mix. And the Canadiens are coming off of a game against Vancouver at home, where they came from behind and won the game in overtime. Another Suzuki goal, actually. This weekend, the Montreal Canadiens go to Washington tomorrow on Friday night, and they play the Capitals, who are the number one team in the East. And then they come home to Dallas, and they play at home. They play at home against the Dallas Stars. Two big games this weekend. The Canadiens probably need to win both to get back into the playoff spot. But obviously, if they split it, it won't be the end of the world. But the Canadiens are playing well, and they're expecting to do great things. The last time I spoke to you, Stephen, we were talking, I think it was right after Dobes' first game. The weekend after that, you were at the game, I believe, and you were gave him some high praise. I think he played a great game that game and had a shutout. The week following, he played the second game of a back-to-back against the Avalanche after the Canadiens unfortunately lost 4-2 to the Chicago Blackhawks. So that's one of the only teams they've lost to just happens to be the last place team. But in Chicago's defense, the Chicago Blackhawks just beat the Avalanche today, so they're playing some decent hockey. The Canadiens outshot Chicago 40-24 or 26. And still lost the game 4-2. Yeah. And then they went the next day, and it was pretty much a defensive battle, and it ended up being 1-1 in regulation and a 2-1 shootout victory for the Montreal Canadiens. Dobes, I thought, had an even better game in his second game. There was at least 5 to 6 high danger chances, and they were players by the name of McKinnon, Rantanen, and Lehkonen, who all had either breakaways or point-blank opportunities that he stopped. So as we talked about before, I think it's been 3 to 4 weeks now that Patrick Laine's come back. It's more than that. He came in the first part of December, so it's been a month that Patrick Laine's been back. He's had a bit of a one injured game in Columbus, which they ended up losing. He's had some sicknesses in the last 2 or 3 games, but they're kind of splitting those games, or they're 2-1 without him. But he definitely turned the tide in terms of the confidence on the team, we felt. And then Carrier, the trade for Carrier has really stabilized the defense. And I think that's been a big factor in terms of how the Canadiens can hold on to the leads that they've had in the last few weeks. And now we have a third point, I guess you can call it, where the kid Jacob Dobes has come into the game. Obviously a huge upgrade from the way Primo was at least playing, and comes in and plays 2 outstanding games to start his career in the NHL. So I'd love your take. I know you're a fan of Monty, you're a fan of Dobes now. Love your take on the current Canadiens goaltending situation, what you feel, how they're doing. What's your take on where we're at right now?
Yeah, so I'm very pleasantly surprised with the play of Dobes, obviously. I'm excited to have him in the rotation. It's going to make Monty play better, in my opinion. He'll have a little bit more rest. Hopefully they give Dobes some additional opportunities. I don't think he should be relegated to playing on a back-to-back night. I think he's proven himself to get maybe some additional opportunities. And, you never know. He might just end up jumping Monty and becoming the number 1 goalie within a couple of weeks. Or maybe Monty steps up his game. I noticed, one of the things that you brought up, Rick, with Monty, and I looked into it. I looked at some of the tape. Monty has trouble, and even the last game, looking whether a puck is deflected or not even deflected, just following the puck through skates. They're not even hard shots that come in from the point. And he lets up very weak goals because of it's a lack of focus. He's good point blank. He's got great reflexes. He's got a great glove hand. Dobes, on the other hand, brings us this. He's very focused. He's all the pucks that are coming in from the point, all the garbage that's coming in, deflections or not, whether he's bigger or he's putting his body in the right position to stop the puck. Number one, he's stopping the puck. Number two, he's also preventing rebounds from coming. The puck just sticks to his pad and just sticks there, or the puck, goes off to the side. And these are important, things that are helping the Canadiens. One or two of those shots that go in, the whole complexion of the game changes. Like the game that was 1-1, if Dobes doesn't, keep them in the game, if it goes to 2-0 or 3-0, the Canadiens lose that game. And it's like, he kept them in the game. They tied it up. They went to overtime and they won. So, to answer your question, I'm very excited. I think this is the spark that the Canadiens needed in order to, I think, start getting them to, start contending for a playoff spot.
Yeah, listen, I mean, it's 2 games. That's the only issue I have with your statement, right? Like, so if you go back to the beginning of the year, let's talk about the first game. I remember having a show with you after the first game, and you were, and listen, I want to be like it too, but you were all over Monty they won 1-0 against the Toronto Maple Leafs. He saved like 37 shots or maybe 40 shots. He was standing on his head. Now I'm by no means saying that it's, you know what, that's not even a knock at Dobes. I just don't think Dobes is going to maintain a .982 save percentage. That's not going to be. No one does, right? He's not Carey Price. I've watched the kid for 4 or 5 years. He's improved. He's an NHL goalie, but I'm not sure he's a superstar NHL goalie at 23 or 20, whatever he is, 22 years old. That being said, I agree with everything you said otherwise. In other words, the weakness on Monty, if there is one, and again, it's not every game. It's probably when he plays great, he's great. His good, Monty's good is elite. When he plays really good, he's a top 5 goalie. His problem is consistency. Every goalie, every player can't be perfectly consistent, but where he makes his mistakes are on. I agree with you. He has trouble finding pucks from the point because he tends to lean outside the net to look around screens, and he picks the wrong side. It's too much, and I know that's sometimes you'd say, well, that's the shooter shoots that way. Great goalies have an instinct, and I'm not saying he doesn't, like he can't do it ever, but their instinct is to be more right than wrong, and much more often right in looking in the right direction and covering the net without losing that spot. And I think that's one of the things Carey Price was great at. Not saying he's Carey Price in any way, but that's what made him an elite goalie. And I think that's something he's missing. Now, Dobes, to your point, is a little bit bigger. Maybe he doesn't have to go around the guy. He can look over, doesn't have to move his body as much. It's 2 games in. I've watched him before. It's 2 games in. I haven't seen his bad yet. Like I assume this is as good. Maybe he can get better. I doubt it. I've only seen 2 NHL games. I've watched him in Laval. One of the things you can say about Laval is they don't have Carrier and Savard and well, he never played with Savard, but they don't have Carrier and Matheson and Hutson in front of them, taking away the rebounds, and Gooley and other players taking away the rebounds like they do in the NHL. So the team has played really well in front of Dobes, even though defensively, I should say, right? They've covered the defensive side of the puck. There hasn't been second and third chances, but they played really well in front of Montembeault. And so it's good to have a battle. I mean, look at Toronto has 2 goalies. The Boston Bruins with Swayman and Mark last year, it's always good to have 2 goalies, and I think that's what's going to happen. I think the Canadiens have back-to-backs this week, so they're going to definitely play them. There's kind of 2 games in a row, and then there's another back-to-back. I wouldn't be surprised. So here's my call, Stephen. If Dobes wins tomorrow or plays a really good game and loses by a goal like 2-1 or something like that, or like isn't the reason for losing, I wouldn't be surprised surprised if they play him on Tuesday or Thursday next week prior to the Saturday-Sunday back-to-back that the Montreal Canadiens have. So let's just talk about the calendar real quick. So they play back-to-back. So Dobes is playing on Friday. He's probably not playing Saturday. It's going to be Montembeault. They're not going to probably not play him there. They have a couple days off. They play in Utah. Then they play in Dallas again. And then they play home 2 games against Toronto and the Rangers. So he's going to play for sure one of those 2 games because it's a back-to-back at home. He's either going to play against Toronto or New York. The question will be, will he play in Utah or Dallas next week?
Right.
Well,
I would like him to play in Utah only because Monty has not played very well. Not that there's a lot of history, but he's been horrible against Utah, like horrible. So
I think it also depend if they lose to Dallas on Saturday, because if they lose to Dallas on Saturday, maybe they want to play Dobes on the next game in Dallas, like not to have them go back to back.
I've been good on my predictions. Remember in the last show you asked me for my prediction.
Yeah, I do remember.
I think you can run it back, you can run the tape back, and you can see my prediction. But I said we were going to win 3 out of 4. And we were going to lose one of the back-to-backs. I wasn't sure which one, but I would have told you that it would be the one that Monty plays, which it was. So we ended up winning the game against Vegas, which you didn't think we had a chance. And I predicted a win against Vegas and a split. I predict that they will win tomorrow night because Dobes is playing. We'll probably lose on Saturday because Monty's playing, unless Laine plays. So if Patrick Laine plays, then my prediction changes for Saturday. So I'll just say one thing. Let's shift gears and talk about some other things because there's a whole bunch of things I want to chat about. But I'll say this, that it's a different story, that the Monty start at the beginning of the year is different than Dobes. Remember, Dobes did this against 2 of the best teams in the NHL on the road in a hostile environment, right? And the second one was without Patrick Laine. So I really think this is the real deal. We'll see tomorrow if I'm right, but this kid, he's got confidence. He's got this swagger about him in the nets. I think you saw it. You mentioned in the shootout when he saved one of the shots and he threw the puck away with his glove. That's swagger. That's like confidence. Dude, you're not gonna come in and score on me. I got this game. So, anyways, that's my take on it.
Now, listen. I have nothing to say negative about Dobes. I've always liked Dobes. The only weakness I ever saw in him in the past was his glove hand. I watched him in the World Juniors, and I watched him in a couple other tournaments, and he couldn't hold on to the puck. In the 2 games he's played, I don't think he's missed a glove. So he's been on fire. So people can improve pieces of his work, but I've always liked the way he plays. He reminds me, he moves around a lot. He has Hasek-like, abilities. He's big. I wouldn't call him Hasek, but he reminds me of a Hasek or just anyone that kind of moves around a lot. Actually, Patrick Roy a little bit too. So it'll be interesting to see how his career progresses. I'm waiting for his bad game. There's going to be a bad game. Every goalie in the world has always had a bad game. Carey Price has had bad games. Patrick Roy gave up 9 goals against Detroit one game, and left the Montreal Canadiens after that. So there's going to be a bad game. I'm not worried about one bad game. I just want to see what the reasons are. What's the weakness? I haven't seen the weakness yet at the NHL level. The weakness at the other level was he gets out of position because he's moving around too much, or he doesn't have the greatest glove hand. But he's looked great both ways this year so far. So, okay, let's talk about some other things. So Laine, Patrick Laine. The Montreal Canadiens picked up Patrick Laine. I'll give you context. Here, Montreal Canadiens last year picked up Sean Monahan 2 years ago, and they actually got a first-round pick for him because of his lack of durability. He ended up getting hurt halfway through the year and missed the second half of the year in the first year that they signed him. He then stayed on with the Montreal Canadiens on a smaller contract, on a 1-year contract, and stayed healthy the entire year, and then signed for 4 to 5 years with the Columbus Blue Jackets for over $6 million a year or something like that. So he kind of priced himself out of the Montreal Canadian market.
He got traded, right? He was let go at the trade deadline.
Well, Montreal Canadiens traded him not to Columbus. Where did he go again? Calgary? Where did he go?
No,
he went
not
somewhere else.
Calgary. Wasn't Calgary.
Yeah, I forget.
New Jersey, or
I'll look it up while you're talking at one point. But he was traded at the deadline last year for a first-round pick. And then they basically, so they got 2 first-round picks for him. And then they basically, my point of this bringing him up is he's hurt again. He got hurt last night. He's had a good start to the season, but he's hurt again. Players that are injured get injured, and that's one of the reasons why teams get rid of them. And so Patrick Laine is a great hockey player, and if he can stay healthy, and that's the underlying factor, he can be the Monahan of year 2. He'll be a factor on the team. This is not, I don't believe, an injury unless they don't usually lie, the Montreal Canadiens. I believe he had a very severe flu, or maybe they would probably say if it was COVID, like something severe enough that kept him out of the games last week. I think he was on the ice today. But he was like on non-contact jersey, but it was more because I think he's trying to get back into shape. He lost probably a lot of fluid and was probably sick for the last week. And so they also probably figure he can't play back-to-back games. So maybe don't go on a plane and go to Washington, stay home, and you can play Saturday night. So your prediction might have to change if he's ready to play on Saturday.
Pleasantly.
Yeah, exactly. But all in all, I mean, listen, he's missed 1 game since returning, half a game since returning, and some might say that he missed that game maybe because he didn't want to get re-injured and the Canadiens felt like it wasn't worth it. Because remember, this was a game that he just before the day before the game, he talked to the media, probably said a few things he shouldn't have said, where he talked about the fact that Columbus aren't winners and they give up and it's not a place I like to play, and Montreal is much more fun to play in. And he riled up his ex-teammates and they went after him in a period, and he probably did get hurt. And they probably said, you know what, you were out there for like 4 minutes of shifts and you got hit 18 times. I don't think it makes sense for you to play this hockey game. We need you long term. And so they sat him down. And then since then he's been sick. So I don't think it's an injury that's holding him back. I know he played a couple of games since then, but anyway, that's my 2 cents on that one.
Yeah,
2 games in Florida.
I'll tell you this: that this 8-2 run and even longer is, he is a direct responsibility. Him and Dobes, their play, both of them, and then also let's not forget Laine Hutson, his improved play. He's definitely, not to shift gears so quickly, but he's definitely the top candidate for Rookie of the Year over the last. I think he's vaulted himself into the top position, and then one more player. So I think these 4 players, Kirby Dach, the play of him, obviously, the other players that have been playing well, Caulfield, Suzuki, without a doubt. But the improvement of Kirby Dach, Patrick Laine, his addition to the team, the improvement of Laine Hutson, it's not even improvement, it's just a maturation, right, of his game that's kind of like growing the confidence that he exhibits when he carries the puck. And then having now 2 good goalies without having to deal with this primo, right? Now the Canadiens are suddenly 8-2. Every game, they can literally win almost every game that they play. They're not going to win every game they play. But this is a team that can contend for the playoffs. So I'm like super excited because, hockey is a game of inches. When you have your goaltender, keep you in a game 2-1. The other game, last game that Monty played, they were down. Were they down 2-0? They scored a goal 2-1. Then they tied it up, and they just kept grinding, right? They found a way to get the game into overtime. I think Monty was lucky because they came in and they beat Monty. The puck hit the inside of the post. I thought it was in. It went to overtime, and then we won it in overtime. But like, you got to win those kind of games. I don't think Monty played well in that game. I think that if Dobes played that game, I think we win the game 4-1 or 4-2 easily, without a doubt. In my opinion, my humble opinion.
All right, you said a few things there. I'll tackle that last one. The good Dobes, yeah, and if it was the good Monty, they would have won by a lot too. I mean, he didn't play his good game, right? So Monty's played a lot more hockey games. I hope you're right. You're very optimistic about Dobes. I'm optimistic about him, but I'm waiting for his. You can't be perfect all the time, so I want to see what that looks like when it's not there. So you said a few things there. I don't know if it was you or Cole, my son, we had a couple shows ago as well, but he predicted a long time ago that Laine Hutson was going to win the Rookie of the Year award. I loved Laine Hutson. You know that I've been watching that kid for 4 or 5 years. I was negative about Celebrini at one point coming into the year. I thought that Laine Hutson was the reason why Celebrini was so good in Boston College, but Celebrini is really good too. So the issue is going to be like he's gotten to the first scoring position in 40 games over those guys. But he only really started playing power play 1 after 25 games. He's starting to really put the puck in the net more. He's gotten 3 goals in the last eight games or something like that. So, like, I think Laine Hutson has a good chance, but I think it's going to be a close battle between him and Celebrini, and it'll depend on, how it'll probably depend on how they go the rest of the year. If the Montreal Canadiens are competing and in the mix and in the playoffs, and he's the key player behind it, he should win it. So I don't disagree. The other thing is like Dach. I mean, I've always been a big fan of Dach. I was concerned with him in the beginning of the year as well. And yeah, the last 3 to 4 games, maybe more, maybe 5 or 6 games, he's definitely stepped it up a lot. I don't care if he puts the puck in the net or not, although he put 4 goals in the net in that time frame. I like the fact that he's carrying the puck, winning battles on the boards, carrying the puck around the net, making his moves that he does, making smart passes. He's still him and Newhook are the only forwards in the team right now that have had problems with the defensive responsibility side of the puck. So I love the fact that he's playing well offensively, Dach, but I'm a little concerned about Dach and Newhook on a line. Not when they're doing it right, but that hybrid defense that you were complaining about in the beginning of the year where we were getting blown out. Right. That's the only line that still hasn't figured it out. They're doing the offensive thing right, but the defensive side of the puck, they're still causing mistakes. And it's coming from Dach and it's coming from Newhook. And Laine, when he's in there, isn't perfect either. He's known as not a perfect defensive player either. So that's the risk I see on that line. But I love the way they're playing offensively and they're starting to contribute offensively. And as long as you can get that line to produce enough that the minuses outweigh the pluses, and I mean the pluses outweigh the minuses, so you maybe over a 10-game period, maybe you're only plus 3 or 4 on that line. It's going to be a lot better because right now that line is like minus 20, right? From the beginning of the year, like Dach and Newhook are in the high 20. Like Dach is in the 20s.
Yeah, listen, I have nothing good to say about Newhook. Even though he scored 2 goals or 1, like whatever, he got 2 assists, and in the game that I went to, and I think that the guy's lost. I think he shouldn't be he's not a top 6 player. I think Heineman has been playing a lot better. I think if they switched him, Heineman, and Newhook and just replaced them, right? I think that even though they're not going to change it because Dach is playing better.
You're not going to change it. You're not going to change it. The other reason, it's the fourth line.
Yeah, we're not going to change it now.
You can't miss it. As much as we don't. Everyone thinks to agree. I think everyone agrees with you that Heineman is belongs in a different line. At a second, so he can be on the first line, he can be on the second line, but he's doing so well on that line, and Evans and Armia are just playing so well. Why break up something that's working, right? And that's the problem. It's going to have to, I tapping on wood, it's going to have to take an injury. It's going to have to take something else that's going to make that happen. And I know that like Laine is not there, but they still don't put Heidemann on that line. They put Pizzetta on that line because the reason they're doing that is because they don't want to break up that fourth line. That fourth line is playing amazing hockey. It's not that they're scoring only. They have 27 or 28 goals for a fourth line. The next closest fourth line.
Are they really the fourth line?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, I know. That's what I've been saying. I'm saying they're the second best line on the team, if not the first.
Jake Evans?
Yeah, Jake Evans, Armia, and a Heinemann.
Yeah.
It's not the fourth line. I
know. Of course. It's not the fourth line.
But who's the fourth line then? I want you to tell me.
They don't have a fourth line.
It's your buddy. It's your buddy. I know, that's the thing. They don't have a fourth line. It's good. They have different energy lines, right? They have a Gallagher and Anderson that just, what I see is they should probably put Heinemann on a line with Laine and Dach and have but again, you just don't want to lose what you're getting with Evans right now and Heinemann. Those two have such a great chemistry. Okay. So anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, so we talked about the two games coming up. We talked a little bit about Newhook. We talked a little bit about the Doc. Let's just close this out with a little bit more talk about Laine Hutson. I'm super pumped about this kid. I'm so eager to see him in the next 10 games. Unlike you, who thinks it's between him and Celebrini, I think it's just him. Unless knock on wood that he stays healthy. This Celebrini started off hot and kind of stagnated, and he'll probably end up scoring 55, 60 points or something like that. Laine Hutson is getting better every game. Like he started off, you could see the confidence and he's carrying the puck with confidence but making mistakes. Every game now, I wouldn't be surprised if this guy starts putting in 2 points a game for the rest of the season. He is like, I don't see a better defenseman, maybe Cale Makar, but he's so similar. Fox, Makar, and him, in my opinion, are three of the top three offensive defensemen that I see in the game right now. What are your thoughts?
So listen, I think you might be mixing up Celebrini with Mishkov. Mishkov definitely started off well and has cooled off, and I think he's not going to follow up. Celebrini missed the first 10 games of the year, and then he came in later, so he's only played 31 games, and he has 28.
How many points does he have?
He has 28 points, so he's almost a point a game. And so that's the thing. I think you're right. I think that I think that Laine Hutson has played 40 games. He has 30 points. I think in his next 40 games, 30 points is like a given, and it's probably going to be 40 points. He's probably going to be a point per game player for the rest of the year minimum. Right. So he's going to get to 70 points. I think if he gets to 70 points as a defenseman and the Montreal Canadiens are in the mix, I think he deserves to win it. But Macklin Celebrini has 40 games left, and he'll probably get to a point a game, and he'll probably get over 70 points too. So if they're kind of fighting for it, and he's a very flashy, very nice-looking hockey player, and he's been very consistent the whole way through. He hasn't really slowed down. He's got 15 goals, 13 assists, or 13 goals, 15 assists. Just a solid hockey player. Again, I wasn't a fan going in. I thought he was. I think Demidov is still going to be better than him, but that's another story. But I think from a rookie of the year perspective, now what I will say about Laine Hutson is, and I don't care what anyone else says, he was the number one pick in the 2022 draft. That's my comment about Laine Hutson. I like Logan Cooley. I think Slafkovsky's an important player. I don't think anyone would, in their right mind, would ever pick Laine Hutson first overall. But listen, huge fan of Cutter Gauthier. Not a big fan of Shane Wright. There's a couple other players in that draft that are looking good. But this man, Laine Hutson, the Laine train, as they call him. The Laine train is special. So he has a brother that's pretty good too, Cole, who's looking pretty good in the World Juniors. We'll see if he doesn't do quite the same head shakes, but he has a great shot and he scores a little bit.
Is he drafted? Is he drafted?
Yeah, he was drafted by the Washington Capitals in the. Was it the late first round or early second round? So he too is going to be another one of these Hutson brothers that's going to come in, and I think he's going to be a great hockey player too. Maybe not to the same extent as Laine, but he'll be a great hockey player. So, so there's just one more thing I want to talk to you about before we call it a night. The Montreal Canadiens are going to come up to 20 or 21 games from now. It's going to be the trade deadline, and the Montreal Canadiens will probably be in the mix. They have 4 unrestricted free agents. The word on the street is that they're trying to sign Jake Evans. So they're in negotiations with Jake Evans. That's good news. Both sides want to come to terms. So I'm optimistic. Hughes and Gordon usually figure that stuff out. Hughes was an ex-player agent. So I think we're going to have Evans come back, which we'll see. I mean, I'm being optimistic about that, but that's what the Canadiens are trying to do. The other 3 players, Savard, Armia, and Dvorak. Dvorak, you're not going to get anything for, and I doubt they're even going to get rid of him because they're not going to just trade him for a 4th-round pick. There's no reason for that, so they'll probably keep him around. Armia, same thing. I don't think you're going to get for because his salary cap's pretty high. His salary hit is pretty high. You're probably not going to get more than a 3rd-round pick either, so they're probably going to keep him around, and they may even try to re-sign him at the end of the year. Savard, they may trade. But what I heard, because I don't know if you had a chance, and maybe take a listen to this, you might like it. Hughes had his half-year news conference this week, and he talked about it. And somebody asked him the question, "Would you trade anyone?" And he goes, "Listen, I'm not going to trade players for picks because it will only derail and regress the team it is now. What he may do though." He may trade players for picks and then use those picks to get another player at the trade deadline to make their team better. For example, maybe they'll trade Savard for a 2nd-round pick and then use that 2nd-round pick for pick a player. Corey Perry. I'm throwing out a name, like somebody that can help the Canadiens win, right? So I'm not saying that's the player. I'm just saying they may do something like that. So the underlying factor is, my take is, I wouldn't do anything. I would let the chips fall. I would say I wouldn't be a seller or a buyer. I would literally just say, unless you give me a 1st-round pick for Savard, and that would be the only reason, and I would try Mailloux up at the NHL level and have Carrier play more. I mean, they've been playing the last 3 or 4 games without Savard, and they don't look terrible. So you try that, you roll your dice on that on a 1st-round pick. Otherwise, keep the team as is. Let them go to the end of the year, see if we can make the playoffs or not. I wouldn't invest more. I wouldn't get rid of prospects that we have. At this point, the Canadiens are probably not going to win the Stanley Cup if they get in the playoffs. But if they miss by a point or two because I didn't pick up a guy at the trade deadline, you know what? They're still playing important games to the end of the year. They're getting good experience. If they sneak into the playoffs and they don't win the 1st round, it's still good experience. And they're getting a Demidov and they're getting other players next year, so Mailloux and others. So that's my take on that.
Yeah. So you're going to get me going now. So.
Yep.
10, 15 games ago, they were at 1.6 games below 500. 7 games below 500. I think it was. What was their like?
Well, at one point you had them 7-20. You thought they'd be, because you said you fire Marquez.
I
think the highest they were ever were 6 or 7 under. Yeah,
right.
Under
6 or 7 games below 500. Right. Now they're suddenly 500.
They're over 500.
Let's see what happens in the next 10 games. But if you suddenly see them 4 or 5 games over 500, right? When you say sneak into the playoffs, I will counter that and say that I don't believe that they're just sneaking into the playoffs. I think they're a dangerous team that can make some noise in the playoffs. Why? Because suddenly they have a couple of players that have put them in a position to contend. They're starting to win games against very good teams, and they're starting to get hot. So my take on that is, let's see what happens. Let's not say, oh, because a team just makes it to the playoffs, that they're just going to get knocked out. I actually think you saw this a couple of years ago with the St. Louis Blues, if I'm not mistaken. The St. Louis Blues were horrible for the first half of the season. Then they started to catch fire, and then they were one of the hottest teams in the second half of the season. They ended up getting into the playoffs, and then ended up winning the cup, if I'm not mistaken, that year. That's when St. Louis won their cup. So the sports is very finicky and fickle. So listen, for me, you play to win the games, and just to talk to you about like Savard and a trade, I'm not opposed to it. I think if we can trade not for prospects or draft picks, and we're trading for another player that will make us a little bit better and help us in the run and in the future, then I'm all for it. But if you're just trading a player to just get rid of him and make us weaker, I'm not for that.
I didn't say that though, right? I didn't say that, right? I said exactly that. So I wouldn't do that either. I would either not trade anybody, or I would trade a player that you would like. This is what Hughes said he would do. He would trade. He didn't use the word Savard. I may trade a player and get a pick and use that pick to get another player that's going to help my team this year. But what I will say this, he also said, and I agree with him, is I'm reading between the lines, so he didn't quite specifically say it, but this is what I understood he said. They have a plan. It's a long-term plan, and they're not going to mortgage the future for a player to help them this year to win the cup. So
I wouldn't want them to do that either.
So how do you get a player at the trade deadline without doing that?
This is my feeling. So I have a little bit different feeling than you. I think there's a couple of players on the Canadiens right now that I don't want on the team. One of them they got rid of, Primo. So he's gone. They replaced Primo, who was horrible, with Dobes, who might end up being our number one goalie. Okay. I am not happy with Matheson. I am not happy with him. Right? The guy, while he's very talented and he's experienced, right? I think he makes too many mistakes. He takes too many chances, and he's not responsible. And I think that his value and this is what I think, his perceived value would be an excellent trade opportunity for another player, like that's equivalent to Matheson of value. And if you swap Matheson for another player who actually will be a better two-way hockey player defensively, maybe a right-handed shot defenseman, or even a scoring forward, why not pull the trigger on that? I don't think Matheson is not in the cards.
So that's the same. So you're saying the same thing. So you're saying the same thing, right?
We're not saying the same thing.
No,
you never mentioned Matheson.
No, I never mentioned Matheson.
Matheson is like off the block, but I think he should be on the block.
You obviously don't listen to my show, because so if you listen to my show, I'm one of the biggest naysayers on Matheson. He's my least favorite player on the Canadiens. I hadn't mentioned it. I don't like to be negative on every show. I agree with everything you just said. But remember, the way that plays out is you're trading Matheson to a team that wants to win the Stanley Cup. That's what's going to happen.
I know, but if they want to trade, sorry to interrupt.
So let me finish.
Matheson for a prospect.
No, you're missing my point. You're missing my point.
The GM's got to use his skill.
Right. That's what so let me finish. So you're trading Matheson not for a prospect, to a team that wants to win the cup. The team that wants to win the cup is not going to give up a right defenseman that's solid, that's going to help them win a cup. They're not going to give up a scoring forward. Okay, what they may give up is a first-round pick and a prospect. Let me finish. Let me finish. So what could happen is maybe that first-round pick and the prospect, or maybe the Canadiens like that prospect and replace him with a different prospect. Let's call him Machar, and they take the first-round pick and they trade that first round pick to a team that's not going to make the playoffs. And by the way, one of the challenges you're going to have this season is the Buffalo Sabres have 37 points. They're 4 points behind the Montreal Canadiens, who are 1 point behind the playoff spot. The Buffalo Sabres are in last place in the Atlantic. If the Canadiens lose 2 games, they're in last place in the Atlantic if those 2 teams win. What I'm trying to say is there's no bad teams. There's Chicago, the Sharks, and Nashville. There's 3 teams in the NHL that are probably not going to make the playoffs right now. The rest of the teams still think they have a chance. It's going to be hard to find somebody that you can go to and say, I'll trade you the pick and the prospect I got for Matheson for your Dylan Cousins or pick a player, right? Like, it's going to be hard to get that pick. Okay, that's my point. So I hear what you're saying. I agree with everything you're saying. You're not going to get a 1-for-1 Matheson for a right defenseman at the trade deadline, because no one's going to want to do that, because they're going to just get weaker on the right defensive side. So end of the day, I agree with what you're saying. I think what I'm saying is the same thing. It's just going to happen in a 3-way trade. It's not going to be a 2-team trade. It's going to be a 3-way trade, and that's what they're trying to accomplish.
Right. So I think that in 5 to 7 games from now, that the Buffaloes and the Islanders and the Philadelphia Flyers, some of those teams are not going to be in contention anymore. Not all. Maybe one of them will remain. But a couple of those teams that are treading water right now, and maybe it's the Canadiens, but I don't think it's going to be the Canadiens, right, are going to go on a 3 or 4 or 5 game losing streak, and they're going to be out of it, and then they're going to want to fire their coach, and they're going to want to, shed some of their. I'm hoping it's Buffalo, because if it's Buffalo, there's a lot of prospects on that team that I would love to have on our team. Like maybe we do a 3-way deal to a contender, trade Matheson, get the picks, shove them off to Buffalo with 2 first-round picks and a very good prospect for Tage Thompson. Who knows? That would be okay, right? That's not dreaming a pipe dream of 2 first-round picks.
I mean, we could sit here and we could talk forever about we can sit here and talk forever about the 50 different trades we can make.
Right,
Listen,
right.
I think everything you're talking about, Hughes and Gordon are thinking about, and they're trying to figure out, and they're listening, and they're trying to figure it out. The truth is, I don't think Buffalo is going to pull the plug this year. They're going to try their best to stay in the mix, and they're winning tonight. They're only Buffalo. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Yeah, so I mean, listen, we'll see how it goes, but end of the day, the Canadiens are. I think what's going to end up happening is they're not going to make a trade, but they're also they're winning tonight 4-0 over Ottawa, so they won it, so they're only 4 points behind Montreal. Listen, it's a tight race in the East, and I think what's going to happen is it's going to cause it there's going to be fewer sellers than you think, and that's the problem. You can't buy if there's not a lot of sellers, right? And by the way, there's other teams that might give up more than the Canadiens want to give up for those types of players to win the cup. Whereas the Canadiens are going to sit there and say, we like our team. Our team is young. And I know what you said about St. Louis, but St. Louis was not young. St. Louis was a mature team. They were a good mature team. They had mature players. The Canadiens are mostly a young team. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, they also got similar to the Canadiens. They got Binnington halfway through the year. They had Jake Allen as their number 1 goalie, and Binnington came in and actually took over the number 1 spot from Jake Allen. So there are similarities to what you're saying. So I actually like that reference. That's like the dream scenario. The Canadiens win the cup this year, but they didn't do anything at the trade deadline. They did fire their coach after about 20 games. So your hot seat comment was what they did, but I never was worried about Martin St. Louis getting fired, and I'm still not. He's actually proven to me the game.
Actually, I'm kind of enjoying Martin St. Louis. I like the beard he grew. I like his little. I like his press conferences, and I like some of the changes that he made. So listen, he had some adversity, and he faced the adversity, and he overcame the adversity. So that's one of the, some coaches are not able to do that, and he was able to do that. And now look, he's brought his team back. He had to make some changes. He had to get rid of Primo, right? And he made the tough choice. I don't know if it was if every coach would have done that. I would have done it, right? The next step is, right. If you look very closely at this games, and we all look at these games and dissect them, right? Like I said, Newhook and Matheson are the two players that need to be replaced. And if it's the GM's job, right, to see if we can listen. We're on a roll. This is the opportunity we have. Newhook has done well in the last couple of games. Let's try to unload Newhook. Maybe get something for Newhook. He's a young player. Who knows?
I'm not a fan of Newhook, but he's just in the wrong seat. Newhook should be a third or fourth line player. He just doesn't belong in the second line. He could be an energy player that can he brings speed to the game. He does do some things in the offensive zone. He has a solid shot.
Turns the puck over in the defensive zone.
He has a solid shot. Again, if you play with smart players if he played with like an Evans and an Armia, he wouldn't hurt the team. They would be the defensive side of the puck. Listen, he's just in the wrong seat. And by the way, Matheson is too. The problem with the Montreal Canadiens is, and why I agree they should trade Matheson compared to use him in the third line, is the Canadiens have three solid left-handed defensemen. They have Laine Hutson, they have Gouli now, and they have Arbor Jacki, who's playing some really good hockey. So you have three good left-handed defensemen, and Strubal's not terrible. You don't need Matheson anymore. Matheson is at his height of his value. I'm not wrong. But again, what I'm saying, Steve, is now is not the time. I'll tell you why. I'll say it again. At the trade deadline, you would get the most you can from Matheson, but it will probably be picks. It won't be players, because the team giving up doesn't want to get weaker. They want to get stronger at the draft to get and so you're going to get picks, and the only thing you can do with those picks are use them or trade them for assets. And who wants picks? Teams that are out of the playoffs. The problem is there's not enough teams out of the playoffs. So that's the problem.
Let's see. So listen. Let's agree to disagree. Let's see how the next 5 games go.
I'd love to trade Matheson. If they could trade Matheson, it would probably be because they did what we just said, and kudos on them, and I like the call. But I think it might happen with Savard, or it might happen with Matheson. And at the end of the day, the Canadiens need a right-handed defenseman, like you said, that's like a Carrier, but maybe bigger. And then they need a second-line center or a second-line forward that can score goals. So I think that's where they're at.
I think that Matheson can fetch a better player than Savard. That's just my take.
For sure. But the problem is what I said before. Like you're not going to get something in return now. You might at the draft. That's when you might want to trade him. Remember, and the other thing is he doesn't belong to be. He's not a first top pair defenseman. He's a third, fourth, or fifth defenseman on a good team. I don't hate Matheson. He has so much skill. He's like beautiful shot, beautiful skater. Can hit people, could block shots, but he makes so many mistakes. Oh my God. So anyway, and he just doesn't know how to pass sometimes. Anyway, so that's my 2 cents on Matheson.
All right, so let's end the show with a prediction for the game this weekend.
All right. I have the Montreal Canadiens winning both games. I believe they're going to win both games. I think the Canadiens are on a streak right now. Washington Capitals are a tough team. I'm more worried about the Washington game than Dallas, and you know how we are against green teams. But the thing I will say about the green team is they are away, so it's going to be mostly white. So that's where I'm hoping. And I think the Montreal Canadiens beat Dallas last time we played them last year. So I'm taking the Canadiens to win both games. Both games are going to be close. I wouldn't be surprised if one or both are in overtime. But I will say they're all going to be 1-goal games. And the Canadiens are going to win both of them.
Okay, so my prediction is if you said Dobes is playing on Friday, if it's already done.
Yeah, that's been announced. I mean, things could change.
I'll take the Canadiens to beat the Washington Capitals in a close one.
Okay.
He's going to frustrate Ovechkin and the Washington Capitals. The Saturday game all depends if Laine is in the lineup. So if he's in the lineup, we win.
Okay.
If he's not in the lineup, we don't win. We lose. So that's my prediction.
All right. Well, we'll see. It's probably 50-50 that he's in the lineup, so it sounds like it's 50-50 to you that they're going to win.
I think it's a
they're
split.
going to win either way. I don't think he's that much of a factor on Saturday night, but listen, let's see what happens. He might play, so it might be moot. All right, that's it. I think we're good. It was a great show. Thanks for being here, Stephen. Look forward to the games this weekend, everybody. This was Next Shift with Rick Wagen and Stephen Cohen. Suzuki does not suck. Talk to you guys soon.